score on it or something. But the trouble is that pretty much every game has UI in it somewhere. And the Unity UI tools are very, very difficult, right? So yeah, if you're like me, you probably like just made a canvas, put some buttons on it or something, and then you realize that when you resize it, like your buttons fly off the side of the screen or something. And it's and hopefully you figured that out while you were building it. If you're like me, though, you probably figured that out after after you released your game, when some player commented like, "I've got a custom monitor built to fit in my letterbox, and your game doesn't look right on it." So I've kind of learned through trial by fire how to do a lot of UI scaling stuff. And I'm gonna pass it on to you because there was kind of nobody to teach me, right? Just nobody knew how to do this stuff. And so it's my one and only thing that I'm actually pretty good at in Unity. This is a no coding class, so you're not going to need to do any code at all. It's all in the just in the editor. And I'm using Unity version. What version am I using? Unity version 2022.3.19 F1. But the UI tools have not changed very much, so most versions should work pretty much the same way. You shouldn't need to download that version. Just I've put in a link to a Google Drive folder that has it both has instructions for what we're going to be doing in this class, and it also has just some UI elements that you can use if you want. You're welcome to use your own, but I made some that'll just help demonstrate what we're trying to do, demonstrate things like line slicing and so on, and button animations. But you are under no obligation to use those if you have other ones you prefer. All right, so what we're going to be building here is this monstrosity. I went and made the absolute most horrendous UI I could possibly think of. Do not make the UI in your actual game look like this. Yes, obviously, this was not designed for either aesthetics or usability, but it was designed to demonstrate as many different aspects of UI as I could think of. We've got our sliders, we've got our scroll bars, we got our text boxes, buttons, horizontal layout groups, vertical layout groups, drop downs, bunch of different panels oriented in different ways, laid out in different ways. We've got text flowing around a picture and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and as you can see, when you go to scale this, it scales very smoothly, even down to a really, really distorted aspect ratio, both in the horizontal and in the vertical. You can scroll it really, really far. And that's tough to do. So how is everyone? Does everyone have the materials downloaded, or are you ready to go, or do you want me to give you a few more minutes to download stuff? You can ask questions in the chat, and you can also raise your hand if you want to come up on stage and ask something. Either way is fine. I'll be keeping an eye on both. Sorry, it just the download link is just scrolled up a bit, but you can grab it there. Yeah. here's what we're building. We probably won't be able to build the entirety of this monstrosity today, so I'm going to go through the basic stuff, and then I'm going to let us skip around a little bit if there are specific things you want to um, make sure we cover, like 9 slicing or text boxes or whichever, to make sure we get through the stuff that people care about the most. Okay, so we think we're all ready to go. If so, we can go ahead and create a new Unity project. We'll just start with a completely blank project. Doesn't really matter. I made a 2D project. Doesn't really matter if it's a 2D project or the 3D project because we're all going to be working on the UI level anyway. Right? All right, let me share real quick. Okay, and of course, first most important thing we're going to do is make a canvas. So that'll be right click, go down to UI and select canvas. Now, when you make a canvas, Unity automatically adds another game object called the event system. This is super important. The event system is the one that makes your UI actually work. Yep, we're recording this. It's the one that makes your buttons click. It's the one that makes it take input. And the reason that's important is that it makes one automatically when you create a new canvas. It doesn't add one automatically if you cut and paste a canvas. So if you take this class and you get all your beautiful elements looking exactly the way you want, and then you want to copy and paste them into your 25 different levels, make sure you also add an event system, because if you just copy and paste your canvas, then you will drive yourself mad going, why didn't that button click, do anything? So that's important. Now, the most important thing for scaling, Unity UI, I have no idea why the game world is tiny and then the UI is 1,000 times bigger and to the right. That is one of just the vagaries of Unity. Somebody thought that was a good idea at some point in their life. I don't know. So it is. So the most important first thing we have to do here is the canvas scaler. This is one of those things in Unity that just comes set by default to a thing that is almost never what you want. The scale mode here, it sets to be constant pixel size, which means that if somebody has a monitor that's got twice the resolution, your UI is now going to only be half the size of the screen, right? And so we're going to change it to scale with screen size, which is almost always what you want. Now, the reference resolution is automatically set to, I assume that was the common resolution when Unity was first made, but you probably want to set it to 1920 by 1080, which is still the most standard screen resolution. Okay, so now your UI is going to scale with the screen size. Bigger monitor is going to be bigger, and that's going to fix 90% of your scaling problems right there. The problem is that it's not going to gracefully adapt to different aspect ratios, right? So it'll look great on a 16:9 ratio monitor, but if someone has a 4:3 ratio monitor, then it's suddenly going to all get distorted, and that's where all this stuff we're going to talk about comes in. All right, and to test how it looks, you're going to want to go to the game window and set your display to free aspect here, and that'll let you drag the window around, and it'll resize the UI in real time without having to actually run the game. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do out of this horrible UI that I made is this menu bar here at the top, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to make a menu bar that um, always occupies the top 100 pixels of the screen, no matter what your screen resolution is. All right, so right. All right, so let's go to our canvas and let's create um, a panel. We'll just call that base panel that we're going to put everything on top of. Now, a quick note when you're creating panels, because this has messed with me. UI panels by default are white but partly transparent, and they also have a graphic by default that is not exactly quite white. It's very light gray. And I definitely know people who have built some panels and changed them to different colors and gone, why are my colors all muddy? Well, it's because you have this background image here that's not completely white. So you may want to delete that, and then your panel will just be plain white. And you probably want to change it to 100% opacity as well. Again, that's one of those things where Unity's default is just never what you actually want. All right. Um, so let's create some children for this panel, and they'll also be panels. We'll go ahead and make a panel. We'll call it menu bar, and a second panel, and we'll call that main window. Okay, and to me, it's helpful to set these to be like different colors, purely just so we can see which one fills what part of the space, right? Um, like that. And that is why that horrible UI that I built is all those goofy bright colors, just so we can see what's where. Right, so what we're going to want to do now to make these take up the right amount of the screen is we're going to use a vertical layout group. Now, layout groups are one of the things you're going to use all the time in Unity. This is a really key thing. They are a type of component. So go to your inspector window, click on Add Component, and then look for vertical layout group and add that to your base panel. It just made all the children disappear, but don't worry. They've just been flattened down to size 0, but we're going to change the settings to make them come back. Now, there are these 3 settings under vertical layout group. Control child size, use child scale, and child force expand. They're just absolutely meaningless. They have these names that I have no idea what they mean, and I often find myself just sort of checking and unchecking them at random until they do what I want. But in this case, what we want to do is we want to check control child size for both width and height. You see, there are panels now. That has made our panels, made the layout group expand the size of our 2 panels so that they fill all of the base panel, right? And then for child force expand, we're going to check that for width, but not for height. Okay. We're going to control the height a different way. So now, we're going to go to menu bar here, and there's another kind of component that is very important here. It's a layout element. So a layout group, basically, you put it on the parent, and that allows the parent to govern the properties, the layout properties of the children. Great for things like I want to make all these menu items line up neatly, you know. But if we want to override some of those in order to make the children do specific things, what we want is a layout element on the child. And this allows us to set some of these traits on the particular child that the layout group on the parent then will be forced to respect. So what we've got here are the minimum width and height that the thing can occupy, and it will never ever get smaller than that. The preferred width and height, again, this is what it will typically go to unless like there's a different layout element that takes priority that takes up too much room, and then it would squash down to the minimum. And then flexible width and height. These first ones are a value in pixels. These last two are a percentage, and that is just if there's leftover space, how much of it should this element take up? And then finally, we have our priority. Finally, we have our priority, and that is which of the elements is going to be more important if there's a conflict between them. If they're taking up too much space, there isn't enough room for all of them, which is more important. All right. So for our menu bar layout element, we're gonna, hey folks. Okay, some folks are heading out. Thanks for being here. We're gonna go ahead and set the preferred height to 100 because this is, we decided we wanted that to just always be the same size, that top menu bar, no matter how big or small our screen is, right? And then flexible height, we're actually gonna set that to 0. So it'll never get bigger than that, no matter how much leftover space there is. So now our menu bar should, yep, it'll stay at 100, no matter how big our screen is. And then for our main window, we want that to take up the rest of the space. So we'll add a layout element to that too. This one doesn't need to have a preferred height or a minimum height because it can get as small as it needs to, but we'll set its flexible height to 1. So now we've got one window taking up 100 pixels and the other window taking up the rest of the space. And the blue one will get smaller, the red one will always be 100 pixels. Okay, so everyone with me so far? Everyone got your menu bar working? Not hearing any hands, so yeah, awesome, fabulous. All right. All right, so let's then break up that main window into some different panels. As you saw in our sample, opening the wrong thing. As you saw in the sample, we've got like a left panel, a middle panel, and a right panel that have different information in them. Yeah, the layout elements, like nobody taught me this ever in a tutorial. And when I discovered we had this, I was like, this solves so many of my problems. Because if you're like me, you probably have spent an undue amount of time just doing things like lining up buttons manually. And it turns out you don't need to. You can get Unity to put them where you want them to be. Now this thing with the menu group, we had to use with the menu bar, we had to use a layout group because we wanted that fixed width that was always 100 pixels. There's actually an even simpler way to make things resize that is going to be useful for these panels for things that don't need a specific fixed width. Yeah, the layout elements. Yeah, because the layout group, you're shackled to what the parent is doing. And if you have one element, you're like, no, this one needs more space or something. Yeah. So an even simpler way to add elements to make them resize properly is to use anchors. And that's what we're going to do here in our main window. All right, so go ahead and create 3 panels as children of main window. Call them left panel, and center panel. I could even spell that correctly. Wouldn't that be and right panel. And I'll go ahead and color those different colors once again for the same reason, which is just so that you can see which one's taken up which space. Go ahead and make a green one and a yellow one and a pink one. All right, right now they're all on top of each other. All right. So the anchors, that's all this business over here in the inspector on the top right. Now, you've probably used these anchor presets at least a little, right? You've used like, oh, I want my thing to be in the center, or oh, I want my thing to take up the whole thing. And those, those basic settings are very useful. But all this business here you can use to create way more sophisticated behavior. So what we're going to do is set these anchor values here. We're going to make the left panel take up 20% of the screen, the center panel take up 50% of the screen, and the right panel take up 30% of the screen. Again, horrible uneven numbers just to demonstrate how this works. Okay, so what we're going to do is set our anchors here. Right now, they're all set to 0 minimum, 1 maximum. So that means that our thing is going to, and they're set to stretch both directions. So it's going to stretch both directions to fill all the space from 0% to 100%, both horizontally and vertically. Now, vertically, that's what we want. We want all these panels to take up 100% of the space. Horizontally, though, that's not what we want. So let's set our left panel to go from 0 to 0.2. And you can see it's changed it to a custom anchor preset here. And you can see now that's taken up that much of the space. We'll be able to see it better when we move the other ones out of the way. Center panel, we want it to start at 0.2 where the other one left off. And then we want it to take up 50% of the space. So that means it'll end at 0.7, 70%. There you go. Now you see that one's going from here to here. And then we'll move that right panel out of the way by starting it at 0.7 and going to 1. And now you can see that's now where the corners of our anchors are, but you can see the panel's now still going way over to the side. So just go ahead and drag it until it lines up. It should, or you can simply set all the values to 0, right? So center panel, we can take out these doofy values and change it to 0, 0, 0. Voila. Left panel, center panel, main panel. All right. And let's see if that scales the way we want. Yeah, so there we go. So whatever kind of screen resolution we have now, it's always, that's way taller than I want it to be. That looks weird. There we go. Those panels are always going to stay in place. And that is very simple. You didn't need layout groups. You didn't need to use layout elements. And we're going to be doing a lot of this, all these little boxes with the 9 slices or any of that nonsense are all going to be using this basic layout to divide the space up vertically, divide it up horizontally, and make it scale nicely. All right. Where's my stuff? All right, so let's go ahead and put some stuff on that top menu bar, first of all. Now, those were the 2 really crucial things I wanted to cover, were the layout groups and the anchor points. So now if there are things on there that you really wanted to know how I did that, is important to you, you can toss that in chat and it can jump the queue and we can do that sooner. But let's start with the stuff that I put on the top menu bar. We want like a drop-down menu on the left, and then the center, it'll tell you what level you're on, and then there's a volume slider on the right. I don't know why you'd lay those out like that, but that's just to demonstrate. Let's put some things on the top menu bar. All right. So, well, as a child of menu bar, we'll go ahead and put a drop down. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if it bugs you, if it prompts you to import TMP Essentials, go ahead and do that. All the text UI elements, or almost all of them, use TextMesh Pro now. Yeah, we're recording it. Don't worry. We're recording it, and also that folder with the documents in it. One of the things in there is a full step-by-step walkthrough of how to do all the stuff I'm showing you, including the stuff that we might not get to. That's for your reference, so you don't have to play all the way through the video to get to something that's 20 minutes in. So be sure to download that as well, because I mean, it's not a secret. I've got it open in the other window, right? I would not remember how to do what I'm doing with if I hadn't written it down. Okay. So we'll set this to the, once again, we're going to do the anchor presets here. We're going to set it to stretch vertically and align to the left. And you see those anchor points have zoomed over to the left side now. So that it'll always stay relative to the left side of the screen. And I'll just set the size to be, let's see here, what should we set the size to? We'll set the position X to 150. That'll move it over just enough so that it doesn't bump off the edge of the screen. We'll put the top and bottom spacing. We'll put 25 at the top and 25 at the bottom. And let's say the width, make it to 250. There we go. So there's our menu, our drop down. Now, UI items in Unity very often have a bunch of children, and you should always familiarize yourself with what all the children are and what they do. So a drop down is very simple. It's got a label. Well, it's got the parent part here. That's the full box. A label, that's the part that has the text of like what thing you selected. And then it's got the little arrow graphic. And then it's got the template part here that we're not going to get to that holds all the actual drop-down items. Let's go ahead and change our font size here. Now, TextMesh Pro, Unity originally had a built-on text tool that wasn't very good. And it is the thing that's still called text, and it's deprecated. Later on, a third-party tool called TextMesh Pro handled text a lot better. It just made it crisper and cleaner and more flexible. And that's why everything is labeled TextMesh Pro, because this is like the legacy thing nabbed a normal name. TextMesh Pro is very, very useful. It does have, because it's a third-party plugin, it's a little bit complicated to use. You're sometimes going to need to like go to the menu, go to Window, TextMesh Pro, and do things like this kind of nonsense, the font asset creator and that kind of thing. We're not going to do that in this tutorial, but that's all stuff you'll need to learn to do if you want to do things like import your own fonts, which you probably do. All right, so going back to the menu bar. We'll go back to this drop down and we'll scroll down to the options here, and let's go ahead and put some options here, like main menu and settings and whatever kind of options you want. Save game. Food game. And quit. And let's see if that works about right when we run it. What we don't have there is the template here. We also want to, so you got to open all this nested stuff and get the child here, and also set that to, oh, Unity, never saving your stuff while you're running it. set that to 24, and then the rest of the drop down will also have the same font. All right. So there's our menu bar. And now let's create a label to put our level in the middle. So we'll go back to the menu bar. We'll make a UI text mesh pro object, and we'll make it say like level 14, whatever level you think you should be on. You can make the number as big as you want because it's not a real game. Okay, and we'll keep the anchors as centered, which is the default here. Now we want to center the text in the space of the label, so we'll go down here to the Text Mesh Pro component. We'll set alignment to centered horizontally and centered vertically. And all these tools will mostly be pretty familiar to you, just if you do any kind of word processing, if you do stuff in Publisher or anything like that. All right, and we'll go ahead and make sure its position X and position Y are both 0, because that'll make it centered onto the anchor point like that. All right. And I'll change the color to black. Doesn't really matter. That's all you need to do for the label to make it centered there. And then we'll go ahead and make our slider that we're going to put on the right side here. So UI also as a child of menu bar. We're looking for UI slider. UI slider and scroll bar. Unity has them designed so that they work very differently, even though they're kind of similar things. So you will need to kind of separately learn how to use both of them. All right. Now we're going to set this one to stretch vertically and align to the right. This could want to be over there on the right side of the screen, and we'll go ahead and set its position X to be kind of off to the edge there, and top to 40, bottom. Going to place a little farther down. It's getting squished, but we will fix that. And width, make it a little bigger. All right, there's our volume slider. And we'll go ahead and put a label on this so that we can tell. Now, a slider has a bunch of children, but we're gonna deal with that in a second here. We're gonna do some slider customization in just a second. All right. So we'll go ahead and make another Text Mesh Pro game object as a child of slider. And we can call that volume. All right, and we want this one to set the anchors to be centered horizontally and bottom aligned vertically, because we always want this thing to be directly above the slider. So align to the bottom, and then you can set its position. Yeah, and then we can just drag that until it's somewhere above the slider, and we got a little room there, and we can center that. Text is kind of big, so let's go ahead and size down that text some. There we got a nice little label on our volume slider, and the important thing is that the label will always stay next to the volume slider wherever our resizing moves it to. This is, however, a real ugly slider. So let's customize how that looks, and we're going to use a super important thing called 9 slicing. Is everyone caught up? Everyone with me for so far? Got your sliders and menu drop downs and stuff all looking good? Okay. 9 slicing is another one of those things that someone told me about like years after I could have used it. Because if you're like me, you probably have like made UIs with like borders, and you just rendered a bunch of different boxes that are different sizes for every little pop-up or something you need in your game that needs to be a different size. But Unity, it turns out, will do this for you using 9 slicing. So that's what we're going to do here. All right. So first of all, let's look at all these children of slider. Now we got the label, that's one we just added. These are confusing, and you do want to know what each of these things are. So the background is the graphic of the unfilled side of the slider. That's going to be all the stuff to the right of where the handle is. The fill area, this is the area that will be occupied by the filled in part of the graphic, but it's not the graphic itself. Fill is the actual graphic that's going to fill that space. The handle slide area is everywhere the handle is permitted to go, so you can see it's a little bit shorter than the background so that your handle can't just like fly off the end. You want your handle to kind of stop nicely aligned with the end of the box. And finally, handle, that's the actual little button that you're going to grab and drag around. So let's go ahead and import some custom assets here, which I failed to do in advance and should have. So I will do that real quick. Sorry, I'm just copying and pasting some stuff here. All right, and now here's our assets we're going to use here. Obviously, I did not pick these for aesthetics. They're just kind of random stuff. So let's set the let's go to the background game object, and let's set the image to this one I have here called slider.png. And you can just click and drag that to the source image there. All righty, it's a nice little box there now. If it looks blurry and pixelated on your computer, you'll want to go to the slider.png object down here in assets. So click on that, and then in inspector, you're going to want to change some of the import settings. Go to sprite editor here. First of all, change filter point to point no filter. That's a nice thing to use for pixel art. It'll make your pixel art look all crisp. And then we're going to go here to sprite editor. Does it actually share? No, it doesn't. I'm going to switch windows here. Just a moment. Which windows? Doesn't want to show me the window. Okay. Whatever. I'll get full screen for a second here. All right. Now here's the sprite editor window, and yours will probably start out looking like this, with these green handles are going to be right at the corners. Now here's where the 9 slicing comes in. I'll show you how this works. So the principle of 9 slicing is you're going to take your graphic and you're going to divide it into 9 pieces, and that's going to be corner, 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 side, 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 and middle. And then when it resizes, it's going to keep the corners always a constant size. They're never going to change in size at all. It's going to keep the sides, top and bottom side will resize horizontally, but vertically they'll stay the same. Opposite with the left and right sides, they will resize vertically, but horizontally they'll stay the same. All right. And the way we do that is just grab these green handles and drag them down until they hit the edges of this gray box that we've made here. All right, with that kind of imaginary edge over here on this side. All right, so now we've got, you see these 4 boxes, the corners, those are the bits that will never change in size. The sides, that'll resize one direction but not the other, and then the middle, which can resize both ways. All right, do that, and then click apply, and then you can go ahead and close your sprite editor. And now your scroll bar should look just like mine now. It should be nicely nicely able to stretch in a horizontal direction, as you can see, without those corners changing size, and same in the vertical. Just the middle is moving. All right. How wide did I actually make it? 250. No, I think it was smaller than that. Yeah. All right. Switch back to our Unity window here. All right. As you can see, I was not kidding about I have the instructions open over here. All right. So that's the 9 slice. This is kind of a basic one, but you can use that for anything that you want to resize. Borders for a pop-up. You can use it to put like a frame around an image. We're going to do that later. Anything like that where you want like the texture. And ours has just solid colors on the top and bottom and sides. You can also put a texture in there. And if you put a texture in there, you can either have it repeat or stretch, whichever one you prefer, depending on what the texture looks like. All right, now how about the fill game object? We're going to want to do the same thing here. Go ahead and set it to the same image, and set the image, all the image settings the same. And then if you want to change the color of the filled in area so you can see when it fills in, there, let's make it nice green or something. And now for that ugly distorted handle, right? We don't like that. That's kind of ugly. So let's change it to handle.png. Here's mine. Now you see that's very distorted. Now you may need to, if it looks blurry, pixelated to you, you'll want to go to sprite editor and, or want to go to the sprite in inspector and change it to point no filter again. We don't want it to be distorted like this though, so we'll check preserve aspect. That's very important in Unity, because that's the thing that will do exactly what we're doing here, which is make sure that the whatever you set the width and height to, the image always keeps its aspect ratio, and it'll just shrink down to fit there. And we'll go ahead and change the width to 50. There we go. And now we've got a handle that kind of fills up our space. Now, last thing I'm going to do here is, well, let's make this slider look, the background here look indented. So I'm going to change the X and Y scale from 1 to -1. And that's going to just flip around the texture horizontally and vertically. And now it's going to look like it's indented. And now we should be able to go to our game. If we run our game, let's find out if I did this all right. Should be able to slide our slider, and there you can see our green texture filling it up as we slide it. Very nice. Pretty happy with that. Okay, how's everyone doing? Everyone tired of UI yet? Yeah, Polaris is correct about, I didn't make a textured, I should have, a textured or patterned image to use for the 9 slicing. So yes, you'll want to change probably from simple to sliced to make that look nice. All right. All right, now let's put some stuff in our 3 big windows here. So I'm going to start with this text box that's on the upper left hit the quests, or no, what did I start with? The lower left. Yeah, I'm going to start with the one that just has text in it because the quest one is a little bit more complicated. Now, this could be like your game transcript. It could be like you could put dialogue there, or like a more detailed description of the quest, whatever. But the important thing is you want that text box to fill the space and then have a scroll bar that's going to appear if the text overflows the space, but not if it doesn't. Right, so let's go ahead and go to left panel here. Let's make another UI panel as a child of that. You can call it, what did I call it in the tutorial? I call it transcript panel. Obviously, you're more of a purist than I am if you've been renaming all these things as you go along, which you should, but who among us is that diligent? All right, yeah, so we're going to set that to take up the bottom. I have it taking up the bottom 40% of this panel. And we'll do that just the same way as we did with those three panels, except that we're doing vertical instead of horizontal. Now, counterintuitively for me, in Unity, 0 is the bottom and 1 is the top. So if we want to set it to take up the bottom, we'll set that to 0 to 0.4, right? And then we can set our why is it not doing what I want here? Alrighty. All right, so now we're gonna make a oh, hang on, we didn't want that to be a panel. We wanted that to be a scroll view. I guess a scroll view is a child of the panel, which is fine. Okay, so we'll go ahead and make a scroll view now. That's UI scroll view. We can set that as a child of our transcript panel here. And if we just go ahead and set those anchors to occupy 100% of our panel there. Okay, now a scroll view is a really complicated piece of equipment. It has a lot of children here. And it's pretty important what they all do, right? So the scroll view here, that's the parent. It contains all the other stuff. It has a lot of our settings and stuff that we want here. Viewport, you can see the viewport here is a little bit smaller, right? So it's the area other than the space taken up by the actual scroll bars. What the viewport is it's a mask. And so that makes anything within it cut off if it goes outside that rectangle. And then the content is the child of the viewport. And that's the thing where we actually put our stuff in our case, the text. And then we've got two scroll bars, the horizontal and the vertical. And the scroll bar has two children. One's the slide area and one's the handle. This is somewhat reminiscent of the way the slider does it. It's a little bit simpler because it doesn't fill in with that fill color. And the other main thing that's different in Unity is the slider handle will always be a constant size, whereas the scroll bar handle will resize so that the more content there is, the shorter the scroll bar will be, right? All right, so let's go back to our scroll view, the parent here. We don't want our horizontal scroll bar. We may simply delete that, all right? And then go ahead and resize our vertical scroll bar to take up that little bit of space that at the bottom. Now, the scroll view here then, it's now missing the horizontal scroll bar, so we'll just delete that. Set the horizontal scroll bar to none. Yep, and we'll go ahead and set the horizontal. So we've got this two checkboxes here, horizontal and vertical. So that's for whether we want to scroll which vertically, whether we want to scroll horizontally. We want ours to scroll vertically, but not horizontally, so we can uncheck that. And now it just doesn't matter at all that our horizontal scroll bar is missing. Right. So let's put some content in our content box. We can either use the thing it has in here by default, or if we want, we can just delete that, because anything we put inside the viewport will work just fine. It'll scroll. So I'm going to go ahead and put a UI text mesh pro inside the viewport, and that's our scrolling text. I'll go ahead and change the text size, change the text color, and what do we want to do with our anchors for that? We'll set it to stretch just horizontally and then resize it to fit that viewport there. Now go and grab some like lorem ipsum text or, whatever you want. Here, I'll just grab part of this tutorial since that's what I'm looking at right now. Put some stuff in there, take up some space. You can change the font size and font color, wherever you want. And now you can see that this has taken up way too much space here, right? It's just right now it's just running off the end of the text box and it just vanishes. So here's another very useful component you're going to want to use a lot. It is the content size fitter. So go to your inspector for the text box you just made and add a content size fitter. And this is brilliant. It's just a thing that makes things fit. All right. So we're going to set horizontal fit can be unconstrained because we're just going to let Unity govern that the way it already is. That's fine. And then the vertical fit we're going to set to preferred size. Right? Okay. And now you can see it made itself bigger to fit the text. You can also see that viewport there is cutting off the text when it goes above and below. All right. And we can pull that down so it starts at the top there. All right. So there's our content size fitter, and let's put some space around this text because right now it looks really ugly. It's bumping up against the edges. So we're going to want to go down to text, the Text Mesh Pro component, and then way down at the bottom, it's hidden under extra settings, even though this is really pretty basic. There's our margins. So go ahead, let's put, say, however much space you want, say 20 pixels. That's a nice amount. There we go. We've now got a little border. And to make our thing scroll correctly, we want to go back. We want to make sure that this text is being treated as the content of the scroll view game object. So we're going to go back to scroll view here, go back to the scroll rect component. And you can see now the thing we deleted is now labeled missing. So we can just drag our text game object and put that there. Voila. Now that's the content of our scroll view. And you can see our scroll bar has now resized to fit that. That was the missing reference exception there. All right. So let's go see if that works if we run the game, huh? So give it a spin, try running the game, and then try seeing, you should be able to scroll that text nicely with your new handle. All right. All right, so it's about four. So how are folks doing? We tired yet? You want to take a break, get some water? I've got some water. Or do you want to keep going? Up to you guys. Let me know how you're feeling. Also, does anyone have any questions? Was everything behaving the way for you the same way as it was for me? Yeah, Ariana, that's a pretty name. Ah, you're having trouble with scroll bars. Oh, great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because Unity has a if you go to add UI elements, it's got a scroll view and it's also got just a freestanding scroll bar. Yeah, and so you might probably the logical thing you'd try to do is, oh, I made a text box and then I will add a scroll bar to my text box. And you can do that. You can do that because all the game objects in Unity are just based on built out of components. So if you take, just a plain old label and you add all these children and all the components, it will work correctly. But there's so many of them. There's so many, and you have to have them all configured correctly. Um, so starting with your text object and then trying to add children to it to make a scroll work is really difficult. You can do it, but that's why they have the scroll view, right? Which is basically just a pre-packed scroll, window with a scroll bar with all the settings, right? Yeah, something Unity did to be nice to us. How unusual. Um, right. So if we've done that, then after doing that, then making this. Add the space for the margin around it. Polaris, this margin we put around the text. That's what you're asking about. Oh, on the top. Yeah, to add this yellow space at the top. We were using the anchors to do that. Just the same way we did to divide it vertically. So we were just setting our transcript panel to have the anchors go vertically from 0 to 0.4 instead of from 0 to 1. Oh, and then we can set it to be 0 to 0.2 to line up with the parent. All right, anyhow, yeah, we'll be doing a lot of that with different parents. Oh, yeah, the margin at the top, sorry. That's the extra settings in the text. So scroll view, let me get back to my text guy. Yeah, so go over here in Inspector, go to your Text, Mesh Pro, Text UI component, and then you just scroll way down, past the alignment stuff, past all the wrapping stuff, and then you got to go here to where it says extra settings and open that up. And here's where the margins are. And I kind of resent that they hid them in the extra settings because they're hidden down here with all this scary stuff like raycast target and all that stuff that you probably don't want to mess with. But in there is the margins, which are of course something you definitely want to be able to set. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for coming. All right. Other people feeling like we can keep going? And if so, are there particular things in here we're thinking we'd like to do? For instance, I'm thinking we could do maybe this inventory box, for instance, or on the bottom right. Nate, what you thinking? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that, Nate. You're just popping in. Not to worry. We are. We have the recording, and we also have. Yeah, we also have this document I made that has all the instructions in it. So, Yeah, the quest list is using the content size filter. What's different about the quest list is it's instead of using a vertical layout group, it uses a grid layout group. Are you guys interested in seeing how to use the grid layout group? Yeah? No? Maybe? Thank you. I like my shirt also. Um, there's our inventory. Oh, they did. They said they hated the grid layout group. I kind of low key hate all the Unity UI elements because they are all complicated in unnecessary ways and inconsistent in unnecessary ways. But grid layouts are exactly what you want if you're doing something like an inventory, right? So let's go ahead and give that a shot. So let's go to the right panel. By the way, there is no reason you have to put your stuff in um, the same orientations as mine. You're the same layout as mine. You can stick them wherever you please. And we'll go ahead and make a make and create a scroll view here as a child of the right panel. You can make it a panel and then put a scroll view as a child of it if you like, which is what we did the previous time. That's nice if you want to put like a border around it, for instance, but it's also perfectly okay to just make a scroll view or a layout, a text box or whatever. Um, just the immediate child here because we can set the anchor for any control. We can set the anchors exactly the same way. So say we want to take up the bottom 50% of the space here. So let's stretch. We say that we want to take out the bottom 50% of the space here. We'll set the anchors from 0 to 0.5. 1. Voila. Bottom 50% of the space. This should all be easy for you right now. So because we've done that several times now. Now, so go ahead and create a image. We'll go ahead and unpack this scroll view, go down to the content. This time we're not going to delete the content game object. It's going to be the holder we put all our other stuff in. So create an image as a child of that. Now, very important, a sprite and a UI image are different in Unity and they work very differently. All right. So 2D object sprite is one thing, but if you go down to UI image, different thing, works completely differently. You confuse those at your peril, by which I mean I have confused them and it's caused me problems many times. And we'll call that, inventory item. All right. And we'll change the image to this crappy little sword I drew. A UI artist, I am not. You should always hire a UI artist because they're geniuses. Also, if you have any interest in UI at all, becoming a UI designer is by far the most in-demand art specialty. So that's a free tip for you if you want to put yourself out there. That makes you a really valuable team member. Like if you go to a jam and say, I really want to draw UI elements, everyone will go, oh, thank God, right? Nobody else wants to do that. I've ended up doing UI for a lot of jams just because I caught that ball because nobody else wanted to do it. All right, now let's change, set our image type. We want it to be simple. And we'll go ahead and check preserved aspect ratio, and that makes our sword always stay square, even if we resize it some goofy way, which is important. All right. Yeah, and now this, we'll go ahead and now turn this sword You can either make it into a prefab or you can just copy it a bunch of times to make a bunch of swords. To make it into a prefab, if you don't already know how to do that, is super, super easy. You just drag it from your hierarchy down into the assets, and when it turns blue, boom, it's now an inventory item. Right, couldn't be simpler. Or it's now a prefab. It's now that something is now in your assets that you can now drag into your hierarchy, and it'll create a bunch of them. But also perfectly fine to just hit Control D a bunch of times. Right now, it doesn't look like I got a bunch of swords because they're all on top of each other. I don't know, make like 20 because we need enough to fill this whole space here. All right. And now we're going to use our grid layout group, right? So go back to the content game object, the one that's the parent of our billion little swords here, and we'll add grid layout group. Oh, I need more than 20. More swords, everyone. All right. So the grid layout group, as you can see, similar to our horizontal layout group, but it sets them into a square grid, just tiled so that now they're not tiled particularly nicely right now. So let's go ahead and change the size and fiddle with some of the settings here. First of all, the padding, that's like, let's put some nice space around the edges, just like we did happily on the grid layout group. The padding isn't hidden in a submenu. And let's set this cell size to 150 by 150, something like that. And put some spacing in between them also. 20 by, there we go. And now you can see we've got some swords that tile, reasonably nicely here. Now, as Ari predicted, what we want to add here is, the trouble is our swords are just going straight off of the screen and the scroll bar is not scrolling them yet. So what we want to do is go to our content, in the same content game object, we're going to add another content size fitter. Once again, same thing, horizontal, unconstrained, vertical to preferred size. And there we go. Now we got a big long list of swords. And our scroll bar is going to scroll them correctly. And you can go ahead and play your game right now to determine if that's working correctly. Hey guys, okay, what do we got here? Tried to make a whole game anyway. How did you handle particle effects? I have no idea how to do particle effects. I think I'd probably go for shaders instead of particles for the most part if you're on the UI level, because particles just inherently involve physics and stuff the UI might not play nice with. Hey, Chase. Yeah, Nate's saying getting good with UI would definitely help as a narrative person. Yes, yeah, because very often that's going to be the same person, right? They're going to say like, oh, I want when I walk up to this NPC to have a dialogue box pop up. And so it's both going to be your job to like, A, write the dialogue, and B, make the box that it fits in. It's really nice if you know how to do both, right? Oh, Charles, difference between padding and spacing. Yeah, padding is in the grid layout group, it's the space around the outside of the box. Spacing is the space between each individual object. So we can set, if we wanted, we could set the padding to be bigger and the spacing to be smaller. We could set it to 25. For instance, if we wanted, so the swords are now closer to each other, but they got more space around the edges. Or however just looks good to you. Oh, is there any way to have your grid layout group extend in the horizontal direction instead of vertical? Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's super easy. So then we'll just go to our content size fitter, set our vertical fit to unconstrained and our horizontal fit to preferred size. Here, let's sorry, I lost my game object here. Preferred size. And now it's going to scroll this way. And you can see the scroll bar here now is scrolling this direction. Or we can set it to preferred size in both directions. And now you've got one of these kind of messy scroll boxes that can scroll both directions. Most oftentimes, that's kind of hard for users to use. But for instance, if you had a big map, right? See, Ari, thanks for being here. Yeah, if you had a big map and you want to scroll it both ways, then having it unconstrained in both directions is just what you want. Yeah. Yeah. Also, your grid layout group. We had this set to a flexible constraint, which is just it'll decide how many columns and rows it wants to have. We can also set it to a fixed column count. Say like we always want to have rows of 3 swords. There we go. Or we can set it to a fixed row count and say we always want to have 3 rows of swords, right? So those are all different ways things you can do with a grid layout group as you like. Yeah, thanks for coming by. All right, so we've done our grid layout groups. We've done our text. Say we could do probably 1-2 more things before everyone gets tired. Wow, why did I just open Steam? Because I wasn't paying attention to what I was clicking on. Let's say, let's do our buttons down here at the bottom because I definitely want to handle buttons. They're another thing that I think people don't usually learn how to use properly. And that should be pretty quick here. So we'll go here to our center panel and we'll make a new UI panel. You know the drill. I think I have that taking up. I think I have that taking up the bottom 30% there. So y0 to 0.3. Because of the law of the universe that no 2 elements in this UI are allowed to be the same size. All right, so let's buttons. Make a set of buttons. All right. So we'll go ahead and add a vertical layout group to this. 0 Pro now, and this is going to be very easy, right? We did a horizontal one, we did a grid. This is a vertical. Now we can go ahead and set some padding around it. And some spacing. And in this case, we'll check control child size and child force expand in both directions. Also, this panel we probably don't want to be the full width, so you can scroll it down to be a little narrower if you like. And now let's go ahead and add a button. So UI button. Sure, we'll make this our attack button. Now, a button happily only is fairly simple. It just has the one child, and that's the text. So we'll say that's our attack button. Attack. Now, our vertical layout group has caused this button to just automatically fill that entire space. So, so we can clone some more buttons later to fill that, but for now, that's fine. Let's go ahead and make the graphic UI sprite, change it from UI sprite to button 1 here. Now, it would be nice to, by default, buttons in Unity, they change color when you click on them. They tint to a little bit darker gray. This is okay if you're doing like a jam game or whatever, it's fine. Hi, Motley. Hi. Say hi to the nice people. Hello. But I like to do a slightly more complicated thing that's a sprite swap. So that's when we click on the button, it's going to change to a different image. That's a little less complicated than doing a full animation, but it looks good. All right, so we can change the graphic. We can change it for all these different settings, but mostly what we want to do here is change it so that when it's pressed, it changed to a different image. So I'm going to change pressed to button 2. And we have this flat one that just looks totally flat. So we'll set that to button 3 for the disabled sprite. So that makes it look like you can't click on it. And the other ones you can just keep as button 1. I said that in a kind of confusing order. So let's say, let me repeat. When it's highlighted, we'll keep it as button 1. When it's pressed, we'll change it to button 2. Selected can stay as button 1. And disabled change to button 3. All right. So that should make a nice button that's gonna swap. And you may need to set the 9 slice for all these, for button 1 and button 2, well, for all 3 of them. You may need to 9 slice those, just like we did for our volume slider. So same thing we did before, we'll go to sprite editor and drag those handles the same way. And now we should have a nice button that will indent when we click on it. So now you can either now we can either make that a prefab or just Control B or Control D to make some more buttons. You can see that our vertical layout group, as we add more buttons, is making them nicely line up with nice space between them. So we can change those to attack, defend, cast spell, or say use item. Now, maybe you don't have any items, so you can't use that one. So maybe we can disable, for instance, that button. So if you go to the button component and you just uncheck interactable, it's now a disabled button and can't be interacted with. Oh, it looks like I actually haven't 9 sliced the disabled one. I will do that. Apply and change the partner filter. There we go. That looks nicer. Yeah, that's what we want. And we can try playing that and go ahead and run that. Try clicking on those buttons. Obviously, they won't do anything, but they should nicely indent for you when you click on them. And that's very attractive looking. I think that looks way nicer than just the color swap, personally. All right. Yeah, I think we should probably wrap it like 4:30. We've covered almost all this stuff, and we're and I'm sure people are getting tired. All right. Let's see. What should we do for like a last thing here? Shall we just do Toby over here in the corner, our character portrait? That's my Wanderhome character, which is a great game. You should totally play if you like chill tabletop games. Anyhow, but yeah, we can do this character portrait. It's also got a 9 slice, and it's also got a health bar there that fills, which is always a nice thing to be able to do. Right. So portrait with a 9 slice border. So we'll go ahead and make a panel on that takes up the top 50% of the space on the right. All the space that's not occupied by a scroll view, and you should be able to do this pretty easily by now. Go ahead and set that Y anchor. Remember, 0 is the bottom, so we want to set this one to 0.5 to 1. And now that's taken up that space. Voila, beautiful. Maybe I'll change it to a different color just so we can see it a little better. Oh, magenta, beautiful. All right, and now we're gonna set 3 panels as the children of this because, as you can see, we've got your name on top, we've got the portrait in the middle, and then we've got this health bar at the bottom. All right. So we'll want 3 panels similar to how we made this top menu bar, right? We're gonna make, name panel and portrait panel and health bar panel. Now, similarly to this top menu bar, we're going to want our name panel here to always take up the top bit of this little square. So that will be, again, that will be putting a vertical layout group on the parent. And you can see I'm about to cheat here because I'm going to back. I always have to go back and check which of these stupid settings do I want checked. Every time. Yeah, we want it like that. There we go. And then that name panel will add a layout element. And let's set this one to a preferred height of 50. And that'll give us a little room to put a little text box in there. And flexible height of 0. And let's set the bottom panel with our health bar to do the exact same thing here. Preferred height of 50, flexible height of 0. And then our middle panel, we'll set that to take out the rest of the space. So there we go, top, middle, bottom. And as you can see, you could break things up with any number of elements as you like to take up. Motley, licking my arm is not making this class any easier to teach, but I'm glad you want me to be clean. All right, so we'll go ahead and put a text panel or a text mesh pro game object on the top here. My character's name is Toby. Feel free to make your character named anything you like. Yeah, and we'll want this to set the anchors of this to resize and go ahead and make that fill up our entire top panel there, resize with that. Now for the middle panel, we'll go ahead and create an image as a child of this, and we'll go ahead and put Toby or whatever character you like as the image. Now, where are we going to? And now here's another important component that you might not know about. We're going to want to set preserve aspect because, of course, we don't want Toby's face to get squished. Buff. And it's called the aspect ratio fitter. And it's another one of these things that you might think should be default. So the situation here is we want Toby to expand to fill this panel, but we don't want him to either get cropped off the edges or get squashed. Right. One should always uncheck raycast on text boxes on top of buttons. Do they have that? That's a good question. Do they have that by default? No, they don't. The regular button game object has a text box on it that actually still has raycast target checked. I presume that is because the parent, it's just passing on the raycast to the parent if you click on it. So you do not seem to need to do that, no. I will say I am not an expert on raycast at all. I will freely admit that. Yeah, we are building here, we'll note, an UI that just looks like something. None of it actually does anything. yeah, making it all work. Yeah. Anyhow, so aspect ratio fitter here is going to make our portrait actually fit the space. So we will set it to fit in parent. Cute. And the aspect ratio by default is 1, which is what we want because this is square. Of course, if it was, uh, if it was a different shape, we might want to set that to something different. All right, so there's Toby. And now let's go ahead and put a border around Toby. Yeah, yeah. So we'll make another UI image as a child, and we can put this border game object there. We can set that to stretch. And you will need to 9-slice your border image just the same way as you did with those other 9 slices. Make sure to drag those handles to the inside, the very inside corner of those yellow squares to make it tile real nice. And let's go ahead and set that to stretch in both directions. And we'll set the padding to actually to be to -5 or no, -10. Yeah, there we go, -10. Not -1, 10. I can't type at all. Yeah, so that negative, that's going to make it slightly larger. Now you may immediately notice, wait, now our border is going over the edges here into our top and bottom panels. Yep, it is. And so we can fix that by going back to our vertical layout group and adding some spacing between the layout elements. So there we go. Let's get Toby a little breathing room there. So now you should. Let's see if Toby resizes properly. Yay, there he goes. Yeah, and that's especially important that we're keeping that game object the same size as the image it contains because of things like raycasts, right? We want it to, if you click on the portrait, if that has some effect, we want it to only work when you click on the portrait and not like off the edges. All right, and now we want to put a health bar there at the bottom that's gonna fill up or down depending on how many hits Toby takes. Hopefully not too many. You wouldn't punch that face, would you? All right, so so here is our health bar panel. Now we can actually just yeah, make a UI image as a child of that. Put a little padding around it. However much you want. That's going to be our health bar there. I'll go ahead and call that health bar. So what we're going to do here is we used some of these game objects like scroll bars and sliders that are kind of already constructed for you. But like I said, you can construct your own UI objects just out of individual objects and components yourself. And that's what we're going to do with this health bar, right? So there we're going to make another image as a child of this. And we'll call that health bar fill. And let's go ahead and set that to occupy the same space here. But let's change it to a nice color that'll let us see the part that's filled in. So now if we go like that. All right. And we'll set that, let's change it to our scroll bar image here. All right, just made a little gradient on there. And depends if he drops sweet loot. Yeah, honestly, I'm so unsentimental. I will absolutely kill 100 baby squirrels if they each drop gold. They shouldn't have made them drop gold if they didn't want you to kill them. Now, going here to these image types. These are really nice. Simple is what you want most of the time, but in our case, let's go to filled. These things are really handy for things like a health bar, right? And we'll change our fill or origin. So you've got vertical, horizontal, and then various radial ones if you wanted to say make a little pie chart, but we'll just do horizontal. Starting on the left is fine. And now we can set our fill amount. And as you can see, this is just going to fill up and down as Toby's health goes up and down. So I'll set it, because I'm very sympathetic to my characters, I'll set it to 80% filled here. And we can go ahead and, put a UI, a text on there that says, HP 8 out of 10, say. Let's make that a little smaller. And we can center that. And then that's a health bar, right? And as you can use a real simple script then when he gets hit to change the fill amount on that to match the amount of his health. Is there a reason we're opting for an image instead of a slider without a handle? No reason, just because I wanted to show you how you can build stuff out of basic game objects instead of using some of the on-bar buttons. But you are absolutely correct. You can do a slider and just delete the handle, straight up delete it, and then what you've got is functionally the same thing. Yeah. But yeah, those are two perfectly valid ways to build the same, basically the same functionality. Yeah, and I think I'll call it here. We've pretty much done the whole thing. So we left out a few elements here of like the enemy portrait, functionally the same as the way we did Toby's portrait, and then the quest list on the top left. That's basically the same as the inventory, except we used a vertical layout group instead of a grid layout group, using another scroll view. And we've got instructions for all that good stuff in the instructions document that you can download from that shared drive. Yeah. So I think it's time for any questions that you didn't post in chat. You can either ask me or ask me in chat, or you can raise your hand if you got a more complicated question you want to come up on stage and ask it. I'm afraid to ask, did we have fun? Like I surprisingly enjoy working with the UI stuff. I feel I'm in a pretty small minority there. Most people enjoy the physics and stuff. A grid of objects of different sizes. So you want the actual cells to be different sizes then? Is that the idea? That is the recording. Yeah, just ask. Just wait for a couple of days, and we should post it. And if it hasn't been posted in a couple of days, then just tag me, and we can make sure to get it posted. Yeah, because I know some people weren't here for the whole thing. You don't want to see the bits we skipped. Yeah, Hamna should be able to handle that. Yeah, grids of different sizes. The grid layout group does not like dealing with different sizes. It's true. Um, the yeah, if you wanted to, the trouble is like how would when you think about how that would look. Now, if you just want the images within the cells to be different sizes, we can set those using like our content size fitter to not resize. And so we have some of our cells or be smaller and stuff, but they would still be laid out in the same size of grid. You just have a smaller element inside it. Or you can just nest them and have, instead of it being a single, uh, I'll put this one up top. Instead of it being just a single image there, we can put a panel and put our UI image inside the panel. And then we can set the UI image. We can either set it to be like, oh, I want it to be, 50% of the box, or we could set it to just, oh, I want it to be a static size and not resize. Of course, that's getting perilous because then if it's too big, it might just pop out, it might overflow the edges. So those are the sorts of things I would do if I wanted them to be different sizes. But that is a tricky thing to do. Yeah. Grid layout groups don't naturally like that very much. So if you're trying to do like an inventory Tetris kind of system, or like, oh, we want this one to take up 2 by 2 or something, a grid layout group is not gonna play nice with that. That's more something you're gonna want to build more of an ad hoc system for. Um, yeah. All right. Uh, yeah, sorry, that's not. Unfortunately, that is something, and I have wanted to do that in the past. Yeah, were you thinking of like a making an inventory Tetris kind of thing? Was that what you're thinking of? All right, you're welcome. Oh, like a keyboard. Yeah, like I want my space bar to be bigger. Um, yeah, yeah. If I was doing something like a keyboard, yeah, I would use a combination of vertical and horizontal layout groups because, yeah, what we've really fundamentally got on a keyboard is um, a bunch of rows, which and then within a row, a bunch of items arranged horizontally in different sizes. So yeah, I'd make a vertical layout group, and you can set your elements to either all be the same size, or like we saw with the layout element component, we can make this top row smaller if you want. And then yeah, I'd put a horizontal layout group on each individual row, and that'll make your keys fill that space real nice. Yeah. Great. So basically, that's functionally how we did these three panels and their children, just rotated 90 degrees, right? We've got columns and then things filling the columns with any which way that we like. And with a keyboard, you want rows, and then filling the rows whichever which way you like. How do we get the portrait frame to not be cut off on the bottom? Oh, yeah, we did that by just uh, setting that. The first thing we did was put padding between the panels in our vertical layout group. Um, where's our parent there? Or spacing, rather. Me being all smart there, I know the difference between padding and spacing, and then I say the wrong one. Yeah, spacing between them so we have room for it. And then setting the setting the uh, padding on the portrait to actually be slightly negative so that it can be slightly larger than Toby is. And it's just overflowing into that empty space that's the padding we put between the panels. Now, it wouldn't normally get cut off because neither of those is a mask. So if it's too big, it'll just, overflow into the next thing, which is not what we want, but it wouldn't normally truncate it. Thank you, Sabia. Thank you, Happy. Um, you could also put the Trayman saying, Brandon is saying, you could also consider putting the frame as the parent instead of the portrait. You absolutely can. Yeah. Um, yeah, the spacing, the vertical layout group. Yeah, yeah. Um, that's something you want to use a lot because you almost never, of course, want your text box or whatever to be jammed against the edge of the thing next to it. So that's another just nice reason to use layout groups. Just because, yeah, you can um, put a little breathing room and make sure your elements don't bump into each other. Yeah. Um, yeah, making the frame the parent is also a perfectly good way to do that. Yeah. All right. I think we're about to wrap up here. Thank you all for being here. I know this has been a pretty long class and has been a little bit of a whirlwind. We covered a lot of stuff, but yeah. So I'll go ahead and repost the link to the drive. Thank you, Charles. Yeah, I'll go ahead and repost the link to the drive so you don't have to scroll up, so you can get that document that has um, all your, or that has the instructions in it. Um, because you have a much more laser-like memory than me if you can actually retain and use everything I've told you in the past 2 hours.